turn my brain up a little
It's
level.
all- it's
if it's
all
got
good.
one, hopefully you won't smell. Smell smoke.
No, your brain. You got a good brain, Sam. Love it. Hello and welcome to Columbus Local Podcast. I'm Len D'Amico. This is episode number 108, and tonight we have the one, the only Sam Collis. Sam, I feel like a little fanboy because you're bass player extraordinaire in my book, and your vocals, and I've seen you only as frontman and I believe manager of your current effort, a little band called Toast.
Thanks, Len.
Columbus, Ohio rock.
Yes, got to say Columbus. There's countless other Toasts around the country, which we didn't do the appropriate searching before we chose the name. And yeah, so Toast apparently wasn't a real unique thought. But fortunately,
It's a
since
good
we're
one,
Toast,
though, man. It's a
Columbus,
good-
Ohio, there's the uniqueness that comes out of it.
But it is a good thought, you know. Toast. We're toasting great music, good times, fun with our friends and family.
Right.
But rocking it out, right?
Right. Well, we were probably a little slightly more in the sense of we were looking for something that was stupid and made no sense. But I was, thought that we'll have to have one syllable so that the drunks can remember. Hopefully, that was the whole goal.
Listen, man, I am in that camp. Anytime I came up with a band name, it had to be simple. One syllable is better. But if you go through because let's face it, back in the old days when you called the bar person to try to book your band, you had how long, Sam, to that person's time on the phone? This was probably even before cell phones really were very popular. Like back in the 80s and 90s, like you got a couple seconds. It's like, hey man, Sam Collis with Toast. Can you we're looking for dates. Can you do the 17th? Yep. Boom, done. That's all you get. But you can't, and then they write down Toast, right? But if they have to write down supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, forget it. No, first of all, no one's going to remember that. And second of all, bar people that you're talking to and the bookers, it ain't going to happen.
Right. They either heard of you or they didn't, or you could shine them, drop enough bona fides, I guess. And we were always scraping for bona fides. But we had a couple names to drop that we could get away with. But it worked some of the time. We were good at being a middling regional band in the early days.
In the early days of Toast. We're going to get to that. We'll get to the early days of Toast. But, right now, you got yourself, Sam, on bass, guitar and vocals. Oh, and vocals, obviously. You split, give or take, the show with your compadre, Scott, on guitar and vocals. John Widener on lead guitar. Mm-hmm. Although Scott is a damn good lead guitar player, I may say myself, I'm a pretty big fan of his too. He's a good dude. And then of course Lars Raymond on the kit. And what a delight to hear that lineup perform, deep cut rock that I think pleases many of your followers.
Yeah, we hope that us being a little off the beaten path is what's part of the allure that is Toast. Wow, putting those two things together. But yeah, it in its heart or in its essence was always a jam band, but we didn't really catch on with the jam bands because we were heavier. And so it was odd. We were always a little bit of a round peg in a square hole. And now we're, I don't know, closer to the middle, but we're still like hanging on to a little bit of our edge, I think.
What do you attribute the change?
Well, I mean,
What switched you into?
well, it's more after the again, not too much origin story, but after the second coming of Toast was where we went purposely in a more cover direction, with the idea that we would keep it our own and be bold in our choices and stuff, and be a little self-deprecating, or not self-deprecating, but you get the thing, self-involved, or sometimes you just want to do a song because of the challenge. It's a cool, if you love the song, that's the first part. You got to love the song. And so, getting us all on the same page for all of those. And then, it's the great thing about a classic rock band. There's no shortage of great things to borrow. So, I mean, how can you go wrong? And you're splitting hairs when you're picking Led Zeppelin tunes. What song's better than the other one? It depends on who you ask and what day of the week. I go from, 3 being my favorite album to 1 being my favorite, and back and forth our houses. And usually it's 3. Love that Zeppelin 3.
Oh, how can you not?
Yeah, it's so different.
Acoustic, more raw, from a acoustic sense, a natural wood sense.
Yeah, and I think I found, for me, the time when I found that, it was also at a time that I had branched out into playing guitar and acoustic guitar, and was just kind of going down this whole, Neil Young, lots of Neil Young, amongst other things, but trying to learn songs on guitar, because I was all self-taught on 6-string. And so when I started playing, teaching myself that, it started with punk tunes and AC/DC tunes.
As you should, as a young guy.
It was a good place. It was a good place to start. Certainly, the punk tunes was a great place to start because just banging out bar chords.
So for you, so were you singing before you picked up an instrument, Sam? We'll come back to Toast, but I think there's a big, long story we can circle back to get back to Toast.
Your comment section is gonna.
It's all good.
There's gonna be so many riffs on the fact that everyone who knows me knows that I, can talk for days and days and days on about just about anything.
Yeah. So can your drummer.
So can
I love Lars.
I can't get a word in. I can't get a word in with Lars.
I love Lars, man.
Yeah,
you gotta love Lars.
But
we gotta love Sam too, man.
Yeah. Well, but yeah.
Yeah, you gotta love John and Scotty. You gotta love everybody in the band, man. Everybody's cool.
I know everybody everyone loves Johnny. Johnny was the
dude. Johnny is the. I want to hear what you had to say, but to me, he's like the monk in the group. He's the spiritual soul that's just channeling.
Oh, well, the band is certainly built
over top of the cake.
Yeah, the band's built around John.
Oh my God!
No doubt there. But if when you go back into that,
I think you too, right? You're the front guy in the band. You're singing good. You're singing really cool tunes, and you're doing it well.
Well, I appreciate that. So I got to go way back, and because just talking about singing and playing, when I started playing, what I call the classic bass player. You played guitar and found yourself on bass.
Because I'm an old man.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of guys young that started that way.
I get you.
And been a bass player since the beginning, but I can't say it was because I had this moment where some bass part hit me and I wanted to be a bass player. My brother was an aspiring guitar player in the 70s and fell amongst other guitar players, and they had the great idea of him playing bass. And so he was all self-taught, and here I was. I have 3 siblings, and they kind of factor in, but they are all a year apart, and then there's 6 years, and then there's me. So I'm always the little brother trying to keep up, and kind of living 6 years older, or trying to anyway. So my brother becomes a bass player, and now there's bass in the house, and that's the thing that's happening. It's the coolest, what little kid isn't like, my brother could play guitar, my brother could,
How old were you then?
I was
said it.
I was like 5th grade, fourth, 5th grade.
Yeah.
And so, my brother was all self-taught, but he, taught me my first songs. Give Me 3 Steps and Black Diamond. And,
by Kiss?
Yeah, by Kiss.
Too.
Black Diamond. But disco was going on then, and so he was dabbling in disco. So, and as a bass player, I don't know how many bass players will throw him shade for not realizing that disco was the heyday of bass
Of
players.
bass? Are you kidding me, dude?
Yeah, the fucking
well,
bass lines
70s funk too, right?
Yeah, right.
But the same era.
I almost don't distinguish. They are different.
They are different, but they were both like kind of around the same time,
Mm-hmm.
sort of, give or take, and the same, just kind of parallel channels. But bass, I agree. I don't
Yeah,
agree
it
with
was
that.
heavy there.
It's freaking awesome.
And so I kind of inherited bass from my brother, but I knew I was, I was done. I was that was my thing, and so I studied, and but fortunately, and so one last thing on the siblings, I almost kind of important point. So my brother hands me the keys to bass. My sister at that time, and really now, is a well-known singer back in Pennsylvania, where I'm from. And so in my hometown, I was always Gina's little brother, because she was this vocal star about town, Southwest, well-known in southwestern Pennsylvania. So I saw them playing, and I was hooked. And as luck would have it, we had a very cool music program in our school system, and we had bands all in middle school, and jazz bands, and also had this thing called percussion ensemble. But I was in choir, mostly because of my sister. And one of the music teachers said, "Hey, you're Gina's little brother, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, do you play an instrument?" And I knew 4 songs, so I was like, "Yeah, I play bass." And he's like, "Oh, he's like, great. Why don't you do an accompaniment with the choir for this concert that's coming up?" And I butchered it. Something.
But you did it.
I did it, but I did it. But if you've seen any bad cartoon where they're showing someone trying to learn an instrument and honking the worst notes, that was that performance. But even then, I stayed with it. And this guy, it's funny when you talk about Lars, the rock school thing, which is huge now. It's huge. There are numerous rock schools, and I think it's awesome.
Yep.
I was this teacher who had asked me to play with the chorus. then invited me into the band, and I had to start playing for, kind of formally. But he asked me, like, because there were drummers and all these other people, he says, would you like to start a band? And I said, yeah. And so this music teacher brought me and several people. I already knew the drummer, but brought us all together and would teach us all of our parts, taught us how to be in a working band, taught us how to decide on tunes, do your homework, come in prepared for rehearsal, do your run-throughs. And that's where he encouraged us all to sing. And at that first iteration, we worked all year, and at the end of the school year, we played a performance in front of the student body. So this sixth grade band was the first thing I did, and we played two songs.
You got bit though, didn't you?
Yeah, it was totally. It was because it was, it was cool. It was, it's middle school, and you play in front of the whole.
Your whole
school, man. What gig gets bigger than that in sixth grade unless you're, I don't know, like, but.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so that was kind of the start, but I learned then that it was important to sing and play, and then you would, as things went on with my teacher who was a full-time player, and it was that you have to if you want to work for your bread, you should be able to do as many things as you can, as many styles as you can. Can you add vocals? Can you do all this? So I always knew that was important. But I liked singing. I mean, who doesn't? I guess some people don't, but I always liked it. But then again, I was always kind of chasing, my brother was a bass player, my sister was a singer, so I was trying to be both. And so it kind of fell there, but I don't think I would have expected it got to, now, and I'm arguably, in a lot of ways, probably better than I was, 20 years ago when I was much younger and should have been much better.
So did all that happen in Pennsylvania? Was it?
Yeah.
For you? That's great experience at a very young age. You're fortunate. And that music then, what kind of other music though was kind of getting into you and inspiring you early, from that point forward, that kind of got you interested in continuing?
Yeah. Well, once I got into playing, and this is early 80s, I guess,
Yeah, in Pennsylvania, right?
In Pennsylvania, we had, hold on a minute.
Yeah, no problem. It's all good.
Sorry,
little audibles are no problem. I don't edit, by the way.
Oh, okay. Where was I at? Probably not important. Probably another rabbit hole.
No, not a rabbit hole at all. No. Just coming out of that first performance with school, and then I was just curious, where you came from musically. Yeah. Like, what are you listening to? Where'd you go musically from there?
Yeah, so we were rock radio. WDVE, the Pittsburgh station, was like QFM here. Piss people off, but DVE was. I grew up on DVE.
It's a personal favorite of yours, and there's nothing wrong with that, dude.
Yeah, but I can't hear.
But I can say the same for QFM and Chrissy Kemper.
I can hear some Pittsburgh classics. It's kind of like, the gods here at 5 o'clock all the time. There were other bands, but back there, local things. But
oh yeah.
Anyway, hard rock there, but kind of dove into really hard rock and metal very early. So we were definitely listening to Black Sabbath, and I went through Kiss phase like most people, and was there till the makeup came off for sure. but I don't know. That was I was just kind of doing a little bit of everything, and then Rush hit me, and I was really Rush obsessed for the next for a couple of years.
Which album hit you when Rush hit you? Do you remember what you heard?
Exit Stage Left. It was really when Moving Pictures
shit.
came out because
you were too young before any of those stuff.
I mean, they were still playing stuff from Permanent Waves, but Tom Sawyer was in heavy rotation. And
one of my first albums was that first Rush album. So I was early Rush guy. But
I worked backwards.
Okay.
I came in.
I got you, man.
80s.
Just curious.
I mean, I'd probably heard all that stuff.
But it didn't hit you like this album.
My dad always listened to DV, driving around. That was your time listening to the radio and driving around in the car with Dad. And so it was a lot of that. So, kind of as hard rock as they'd go. And they played, Sabbath and Rainbow and Deep Purple and Zeppelin and all that stuff. But me and my buddy, who was a drummer, was my close friend, through those years. He had a lot of good albums, but he had the Black Sabbath one. We beat the heck out of that one. So it's funny because I have Geezer on my my list. One of these times I fell for doing a Facebook list. Name all your people, and I'm way too analytical and indecisive, and so as everyone again who's talked to me before knows, I'm like going, well, you could say this, and I can put this guy at 5, I can put this guy at 2, I can put him at 10. Anyway, so kind of my list, but Sabbath, and then I made the jump to Ozzy, because all of a sudden I'm at the age where Ozzy is breaking, but they're playing old Sabbath tunes in heavy rotation anyway, so you're getting plenty of War Pigs and and all that stuff. So I kind of went there, but Rush, I went just totally crazy on Rush, and as I have a black Rickenbacker 4003, and I don't take it to shows anymore.
Good.
I was for a while. I was for years. And then, but everyone comes up to me once a night. How come you never play the Rickenbacker? How come you never play the Rickenbacker? And I'm like, I like this better. It's a great bass. I love it. If we're playing a Rush song, I'm putting that bass on. Or if we're playing a Yes song, I'm putting it on. We're playing a Motorhead song, I'm putting it on. But
what's your number one now?
We don't play. It's that BC Rich. I've been playing that since my junior year of high school.
Wicked, dude. It's a wicked bass.
Yeah, I get
silhouette.
Nothing but compliments on
the silhouette is like
on that bass.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I didn't know crap about gear when I was young, but I knew Geddy was playing that bass.
Yeah.
So, and I think before I saw any of the videos where he was playing the jazz, and so didn't know that Moving Pictures was all recorded on the jazz at that point, which I should have known, but busted my parents to get me this the Rickenbacker, and I played that for a couple of years, and then this BC Rich came into the music store, and I saw it, and I was like, that bass is gorgeous, and it's got 4 pickups. My other bass only has 2 pickups. Think of how much louder this is going to be. This is, my
exactly
my pimple-headed brain that doesn't know jack shit. But as luck turns out, it's a well-equipped dual DiMarzio setup and sounds great. It's actually there are a lot of BC Rich nerds, especially in the metal community, because we're so prevalent there. But my bass is an NJ series, and the whole time growing up, I thought, oh, this is made in New Jersey. It wasn't until like 5 years ago that I found a page, a BC Rich page on Facebook, that's a Nakajima series or something. So basically, it was made in Japan.
High quality,
super high quality.
Oh, yeah.
Can't really tell the difference, but the American mades had some different stuff. But
that's cool.
Anyway, I've got nothing but compliments on the bass, and then I upgraded the electronics on it as well, because at that point I was chasing I was going in a very different direction. I was chasing a Mark King slap tone without the $5,000 Alembic price tag.
Wow.
So I kind of hot rodded those, and again, like when I've recorded, when the sound men that we work with always get great compliments, and my bass tech as well, Craig Phillips, luthier extraordinaire. He's worked on that for me for 20 some years since I've had it since like 1985. It's like an 83. It's been refretted about 3 times, and
it means a lot to you. I can tell. You're just talking about it.
Yeah.
It amazes me how a person can bond with an instrument. There's a couple that I have, that you just love a guitar.
Yeah, there are certain ones where I've got other ones, and I like them, and when I pick up my Rick, it feels good and it feels fun. But
you're only inspired to play it though when there's certain time calls.
Yeah, or if I'm just kind of want that tone, or it's usually because I hear a Rush song come on my shuffle that I haven't heard in a while, and I'm like, I wonder if I could still play that. And usually the answer is no.
But you picked it up.
Oh yeah, I mean,
that's the important thing.
I play very different than I did when I was younger. When I was, like most people, when I picked it up, it was like, can I learn the song? And then it was, can I play fast? And so I was listening to a lot of hard rock and metal and stuff. So I was all about being able to play fast. That's when I got into, my friend of mine got me into Maiden. And so I went from like overdoses of Rush to overdoses of Maiden. And I did the exact same thing as I did with Rush. When I got hooked on Rush, I went back to the beginning and learned every album up to that
2112 included.
Up to that point, all of them.
You can play 2112 today.
I'll make some mistakes, but yes, I can play
2112 today. That's been a goal of mine, is to learn that.
Yeah, it's great. Hemispheres is harder. Hemispheres.
That's a great album too. Hemispheres. Yeah. The bass line. Oh well, Geddy Lee. I mean, come on. You covering Geddy. I mean, close your eyes. What?
I would say that I played, and when I say like, I would start the tape and just play along, and I played Hemispheres so many times that if I'm tuning my guitar, if I change my strings and I tune my guitar, I can spot the F sharp.
Oh, dude.
That's the intro of that song, and hum the F sharp.
Wow.
And worst is I'm a half step off. Yeah.
Good for you, man.
That's
a study. That's a body. That is a study.
It's odd and peculiar.
But I pick songs like, I don't know, I haven't gone there to that degree of complexity, which I would think is a pretty awesome arrangement and to learn. And I can hum it probably note for note, a lot of those early Rush tunes, but the complexity of I was talking to somebody about this recently. James Taylor, some of those songs that he wrote, just him and an acoustic guitar. The complexity and the lyrics and the choice of notes and chords in certain spots of those songs is genius.
Oh, absolutely.
That's magic to me. That is insanely magical.
Yeah, it's all the things you wish you knew when you were younger, that you realize later, like how I think of, I was like kind of fierce about these bands and these bass players that I loved. Not to say I wasn't listening to other stuff, but I was crazy about, at that time, Rush and
Sabbath and Ozzy and Heavy.
Maiden. Maiden was
at this point.
The Steve. When I tried to learn
Harris,
the first, I think I tried to learn the Trooper was the first Maiden song I tried to learn, and I couldn't play that fast. I had been able to play like every Rush album up to that point.
Is it your right hand technique?
It's the right hand. It's the right. That's
I know,
Steve.
that's what I'm struggling with on
It's
some
brutal,
stuff.
brutal.
Sometimes.
The triplet thing, and they're just unrelenting. So it was great because all of a sudden there was a weak. It's kind of. I felt like I had a good
challenge.
I had a good left hand, and now I didn't have the right hand. And then eventually I went the complete other direction, and I got pulled into Level 42 and Mark King, and I went this total slap bass route, and then all of a sudden alternative 90s music occurred and hit my life, and then I went in a very different, all kinds of other directions.
Are you going to leave it at that?
By that
Is there
point,
enough time?
well, that's what I mean. You might need to go another. But
We can, man. We can do another series for you.
Yeah, I mean, but from if I talk about now, it's the part where I've finally after all these years figured out who I am and what I do.
So maybe what we should do, let's reserve the early years pre-Scotty for another episode with Sam, because I love your freaking stories are incredible. You're one of these guys like Lars that now that you're playing in the same band together, you're one of the giants walking around, man. Like, who knew all this music in particular resides inside of you, But maybe for tonight, let's talk about how you ran into Scott and what happened with him, and how you ran into Widener and what happened with him, and how you ran into Lars, and how this all kind of came together. But maybe it started. Who did it start with for you? Where'd you run along? You did all this stuff, but eventually you ran into one of those three guys. Which one was it?
Well, it was Widener.
John Widener, guitar player.
Yeah, when I moved to Columbus, I'd only been here for about 6 months, and I ended up getting in, joining the Mullins band, and we were working a lot, and it was the biggest gig I had ever done. Was doing all the coolest stuff, and we went through some lineup changes, and Nate from Champipple, that from Champipple, and most Columbusonians know as the Blue Jackets Hammond player, organ player.
Nate, shout out to Nate.
Nate suggested that Widener audition with Mullins, and so Widener comes in to audition for John, and we're all there, and of course we jam, and I was really impressed with John, and John Mullins decided to go another direction, and Nate and I were bummed, and I was always kind of said to myself, like, if I get a chance to work with that cat down the road, absolutely file that away. And after I left Mullins band in, I don't know, I probably have to go back and look at my own written bio because I can't get the years straight, but it was either left there 97 or, I don't know, Toast went off in 99. I called John and was like, "Hey man, I'm out. I'm starting something. I want to start something. What do you think about it? What do you got going on?" And he was jamming with Gravy at the time. But he was like, let's try. Let's just jam, see what happens. And so he happened to know a drummer, and there were three of us jamming at John's house for a little while, and on some stuff that I wrote, and some covers, and some other odds and ends, I suppose. And he said, well, I was like, we need another cat, something, boards, another guitar player, or, something.
Some other layer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What he's like, well, I know this dude, Scott. I played with him in the Sound Masons, and he sings too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well,
like a choir.
Yeah,
participant.
so I'm like, let's try that thing. So Scott was in, and then the drummer flaked out and disappeared. Literally wouldn't return.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, it was out there. We're kind of like Spinal Tap in the sense of like all of our turnover has been at drums. But so since that point, right, there was the three of us, but I just knew, I'd called John even once before. I tried to start a band with some other cats, and that didn't work either. And I was just kind of like, well, why does that keep bouncing off this guy? Nothing can stick. And the fact that arguably the Sound Masons and Stonebird, which John and Scott played in, and me playing in Mullins band, we were all doing the jam scene, essentially, different parts of it, whether it was South Heidelberg, those cats playing South Heidelberg, and
Regional Compfest, that kind of thing too, at all.
Yeah, we toasted a couple Comfests. I'm sure the Sound Masons did. I did at least one with Mullins, but
yeah.
But we were doing
South
the bars
Heidelberg.
that were having the more jammy stuff in them. But
where people were going to expect to go, let loose, have fun, and just kind of groove, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
they were known for that type of live entertainment.
Right, and you made the comment earlier about how you call a place and how long you have. Well, when it's kind of funny because I started to polish a little bit of a script, right, and I started to realize I could schmooze. A bit, right? I mean, I've always been a bullshitter, but it's using bullshit as a weapon, right? Is a different art other than just being a bullshitter. I started to figure out my little script there, and I was like, hey, because I was calling at that time, we had gigs in town. We were playing pretty regularly at Old Fields, and we would do Little Brothers at that time. And,
I loved going to Little Brothers and seeing. Maybe I saw you some of these early bands that you were involved in.
Were you ever there with 6 people? Then you might have seen us.
Maybe.
We had a lot of empty. We always did much better at Old Fields.
I played Old Fields on 4th to maybe 2. On that stage, it's as big as this rug.
I never did 4th.
Dude, it's so tiny.
Toast
but it was so cool.
Yeah, Toast.
It's still there, I think.
Yeah. We had a buddy of mine was, a guy I played in bands with back in Pittsburgh. He had moved to Columbus, and he was in the Johnson Brothers at the time, sax player. He joined up in Toast, and we had worked together before. But he used to play Old Fields on 4th all the time, And I would every once in a while I'd be like, "Hey, should we do one over on Fourth? Should we, because we were always booking North High." He's like, "No, don't worry about it." Yeah,
No.
I don't know. It just we were. Old Fields was the place we seemed to always have people, whether they were there for us or not.
And they dug.
Yeah,
the jam
and
bands,
and
right?
Highbeck was the other place, which I think wasn't jam band heavy, and not to say that that's all that Old Fields was, but I think about at the time that we were doing it, and the bands that were, at least the bands I knew, there were a lot more. I admittedly got out to see my friends, and when I got out, and didn't get out to see a lot of other bands, but I'm a couch potato as it is. If I wasn't gigging, getting me off the couch is a rough thing. Because I can always find something to watch, and I always find something to talk about.
There's always a song to learn, man. For me,
yeah, well,
I'm always headphoning it.
Well, I've always had a good ear. And back in the pre-YouTube days, it was press rewind, press rewind, press rewind. And same thing when you're writing down lyrics. Yeah. God bless my parents and my family for listening to, that horrible. And I had it at the same volume as I did when I was playing.
Oh wow!
But learning stuff by ear, I was pretty good at it. And the benefit of playing classic rock is, in every song that we think about playing,
3 chords, baby.
It's a great song I've heard a million times.
Oh, that too.
And so rock bass playing, it's always different when we pick songs and you look through classic rock, because there's at least one or two elite things going on.
Oh, hell
There's
yes.
either an elite guitar solo,
Vocal.
or an elite vocal, or an elite
Chorus.
drums, or something like that, or the backing vocals that no one would ever be able to really pull off.
Right.
And you have all that stuff to choose from, and so sometimes I'm focused on both parts, but you can think that the bass doesn't fall to the back in it. You still got you can't really kind of take that day off because you're singing, or I don't know. The cool thing about learning them, I guess what I was getting to, and then totally went down. I don't know where my brain went.
It's music.
Well,
it's so fluid.
I can, a lot of classic rock bass parts aren't, terribly, some are harder than others. But I usually can kind of know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because I've heard it a million
You
times.
get a feel.
Yeah, well, I've heard it a million times. And so it's much easier for me to pick it up than it is for Johnny to go and learn a Jimmy Page solo, or Lars to do a John Bonham drum part. I can
8 whole notes.
Kind of just figure out the bass part.
Bass is harder than people give it credit. It can be.
Some
of the arrangements done well is not as simple as people assume. Generally speaking.
There's a lot that I do that most people don't notice. But if I sat there and went and kind of if I just didn't do this thing, choke it this way, it would sound
better,
very, very different. It's
different.
Or very, very different. I don't know. And as the guys in the group know, I am incredibly OCD. I'm like the crazy perfectionist. So I'm really...
Bass line should be that way. And see, my struggle as a bass player is I'm more ADD than I am OCD when it comes to music. When it comes to my day job, it's a different story. When it comes to music, it's more fluid. I'll go with the flow. The bass player should be a little bit more rigid than that. And when I am playing a line, though, I am learning how to keep a precise rhythm when you're playing with a record. But going live, it's interesting because you're not always perfectly
Right.
syncopated. As good a drummer as Lars Raymond is, he's damn good. There's that live element of things you can control that you just got to kind of go with.
Yeah, it's breathing. You have the rhythm section has to assemble and maintain the pocket, right? And when you're learning a song, you're playing it to the radio. The pocket's established. You're just focused on where do the fingers go,
the pattern,
and things like that. And it's the little kind of nuances. Bass is it's a lot of icing on the cake. I think there are certain things you can get away with if you can shred and you can be a chop monster on drums or something like that. You can. There's a lot of ways to demonstrate things, and then there's icing on the cake. And the funny thing is, I'm like, the way I'm, I can see Widener like cringing, going, he don't lay back. He's and I am pretty aggressive. I fill a lot of space, and I think that
you're like an Entwistle player. You're driving the song.
That's the question.
Are you not?
Should I be being Entwistle when it's not Entwistle? You know what I mean? And
do
certainly.
you struggle with that?
Oh,
or do you play off of that? Do you play the role behind the beat, on the beat, ahead of the beat, depending on what you're doing?
It's more busy. It's more the busyness thing. Am I wanking just to wank? Yeah, there are points where I get, I just, want to
drive this song.
Want to walk it down the runway and see what happens. So there is the push and pull of like being a frustrated lead guitarist playing bass, and then really digging the role of the bass player. I try to find both, but I probably could stay at home a little bit more. But I always like to think that even when I extend a lot of things, that my approach has always been to keep it within the groove. So, if you start to notice all my things that I do quite regularly, I do a lot of eighth note runs, but I'll work them up high and work them back down. So it's not, you can hear the climb, you hear the melody of it, and it kind of jumps out a little bit. But I'm not playing it any faster, because then all of a sudden it starts to
diminish its value.
Takes the groove.
Yeah.
It harms the groove, right? Where if I'm working eighth notes, well, Lars is playing eighth notes on the hi hat, anyway. So everything's still in pocket. But anyway, I like it's those years of trying to find the right sweet spot, and if you're gonna be adventurous, like I think we are as a band, and are very committed to
pursuit of that adventure.
Yeah, there's certain things you got to do what the song does, but we take as much liberty as we can, and we, I like to think, take as many risks as we can, and so everyone's got to trust the other one's gonna, pick them up, and you got to be listening, but you got to be singing. You got to be presenting the push and pull, and you also, and probably the part that I struggle with the most, but even though I'm saying it, is have the mentality that sometimes it's going to work and sometimes it's not. I get very frustrated when it doesn't, but at the same time, I'm being live and dynamic and spontaneous, and and all of us, I guess, could, if well, there are some guys that don't have to, but a lot of us would have to spend much more time on the instrument, I think, to be, I don't know, I just, there's times that what's in my head, the hands can't pull off on a certain night, and not obsess over the fact that I went there and I missed it. If you're jamming, you're taking some risks, but so it's more a question of not the risks and the fails, but you're just taking too many risks at someone else's expense. That's the push and pull that we operate under.
It's pretty cool stuff too. It is. It's cool. That's the dynamic of the band. But so coming back, Sam, to your story. Maybe you can pull me approximate year. You were hanging with John. You were hanging with Scott. You found yourselves without a drummer.
Yeah.
Around what year-ish? You're doing jam.
I want to say 99. I want to say 99. It's terrible. Like I know it's
right
I know it's in our bio on our website. It's on our.
You're jamming.
But I think it's 90. I think it's like 97.
Yeah.
And we're jamming, and we one drummer disappears. We find another, and Scott's in. And what was nice is that Scott had already brought a number of originals that him and John had played, and I had 5 or 6 of my tunes that many of which I wrote back in Pittsburgh when I was still there.
What were you called at this point?
We were Toast.
You were Toast.
The first point we played out, we were Toast. It was just, like I said, the revolving door of drummers, and we had a sax player briefly. Yeah. And we would have some sit-in folks as well, but we were trying to take a shot. We were,
write some music.
Yeah, we were trying to see if we could, tour. Could we be, Mo, or could we be, not. I don't think Fish. And not that I'm a Fish fan. Sorry, Fish fans. Scott's a huge Fish and Dead fan. I'm a middling Dead fan.
Widespread Panic, perhaps.
We
Sam?
got our record review. So the record that we did, we sent into. What's the name? There's a jam band magazine. It's like the Rolling Stone of jam bands magazines, and can't of course remember it. It's on our website. But we were featured in the On the Verge column.
Nice.
So we got a review from a national, and they compared us to Mo and Steely Dan and why I think it was Mo and Steely Dan. So
Jamalicious.
But we were trying to, we were doing that thing, but we were different than that. We're certainly a little bit more rock. And then the covers that we played were more, does it sound like our stuff, or can we make it sound like our stuff? So, or
jam groove oriented,
or would
dance-alicious.
Would it go with the jam
dance
band
party?
Would it go with the jam band crowd? And so it's funny, we did Steely Dan back then, and then there's songs that we have literally played that we played Comfortably Numb back then. We still play it now. And I don't know I'm not saying that's a good thing, but we have a lot of those tunes that go all the way back. Cinnamon Girl, you mentioned earlier, that goes all the way back.
All the way back. That's what my question was. So that seems
Scott's probably going to correct me, because Scott has the set list to every show we've ever done.
Wow.
Going all the way back.
Wow.
So it's funny. We'll every once in a while we'll pull a song out, and then I'll come to the next show, and Scott will be like, "Hey, that song 4 years ago."
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
That's his quirk. I have a lot of other quirks.
Did you guys tour? Did you get out there?
We did the Ohio college towns.
Nice.
And I think
as Toast.
As Toast.
Did you do all the self-promotion, or did you get management?
No, we were doing it all.
Did it yourself. So you're
yourself.
Contacting these places yourself, you, Sam Collis?
Yes.
Wow.
Let's just say that I had a corporate sponsor.
Okay. And leave it at that?
And leave it at that.
Okay.
That was
helping
my phone bill.
All right.
And and I had a script. Hi, featuring former members of the Mullins Band and Stonebird. Hopefully you heard of either one of those.
Yeah.
And if you didn't, I was screwed. But usually,
but the college towns did know those names, did they not?
Most of the bars that I obviously started off with the bars that I had played
Yeah.
at. My mistake that I didn't realize early on was when I was preparing to exit that band, I just needed to shake hands with those bar owners, before that was done. So I was name dropping it, but it would have been a lot better if I pressed flesh to it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
You want it in, right?
yeah, we got our chances. Yeah, I wouldn't say because I was playing much bigger rooms with Mullins because he had an established draw all over the state, and so it was rare that we played the Mullins band played to an empty room. It was not rare for Toast to play to an empty room. So, and we try to work out, find a bit. Make friends with a band from Bowling Green, trade shows. You open for me in Columbus, and I'll open for you in Bowling Green. And so we would do that. So to call it touring is wildly overstated. But we were trying to play out of town more than in town, and we were adding some festivals in. But all of our high points came as openers. And that's the weird thing. Even going to like all my best, my best gigs in my career are all opener four.
And who were some of those openers, man?
Well, the first time I ever opened for a national was an international. I was in a reggae band in Pittsburgh, and we opened for Burning Spear. And then we did the side stage at Reggae Sunsplash Festival in Pittsburgh. We may have done that twice while I was in the band. Maybe it was just once. And so I did a couple big shows like that, And then when I moved here and I joined Mullins band, and this is the kind of, again, we're on a podcast, so I don't have to worry about swearing. This is the kind of one of those fuck you, kick you in the balls kind of moments. So when I was in the reggae band back in Pittsburgh, we played a lot of the same clubs as a band that you may have heard of. We would play a lot of festivals with them and different benefit shows and stuff. And so, and if I'm being brutally honest and a little bit sad, I guess, who cried my Wheaties or, I'd like to think that I thought we were at a higher point than them around town anyway. And little did I know about the music business that those guys had been doing everything right and we'd been doing everything wrong. And that band was Rusted Root. And this was before Rusted Root, and that goddamn song ended up in every goddamn movie and commercial.
Huge Pittsburgh fan base, that band.
They were huge.
In Columbus.
Yeah. So I had played all these gigs around Pitt campus and Shady Side, that all the same places that Rusted Root was playing. And so, hey, they're playing the same clubs as I'm playing. They're no more successful than us, but they were having all these under 21 shows. Didn't know what's that all about? They're under 21 shows for the door.
Where? Like at...
They were like filling up warehouses and shit, like kind of self promotion
space.
Look, they did
$10 ticket.
They did everything
raise
fucking
some money.
right.
Yeah.
So I'm not sounding bitter at all. But what the fuck you moment was, I left Pittsburgh with them not having blown up, and of course now in the time that I've moved here, they've blown up. And I'm in Mullins band, and the biggest show where this means something, because when we were outside on your balcony and you were showing me Vets.
Oh yeah.
I was in Mullins band, and we opened for Rusted Root at Vets,
right there, baby,
in front of 12,000 people.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there looking at these dudes from Pittsburgh that were playing the clubs, and they're two tour buses sitting outside, and just eating a big old piece of crow. With fuck,
That's all good,
I
man.
have no idea what it takes to be, to really make it. And again, not yeah, I'm jokingly doing a bitter thing. It was a little bit of a bitter pill then. But I also came to appreciate by that time, I really started to understand that
production is a full-time job.
There's so much more to just being good at your instrument.
Yeah.
You know, there's
production.
There's a ton
it's
of
a
people
full-time
that
job.
are good at their instrument, and there's so many other things that, not even talking about the luck parts, just the other parts about
the business
tenacity and kind of the right thing at the right time, something fresh, right? It's easy to talk shade on something that's new, because no one's doing it, right? But yeah, it's cool because no one's doing it, right? You don't, shit, that was cool. I did, I missed the boat. But so that was weird. So it was my high. It was my personal high, but it was very, kind of getting punched while you win the race.
It helped you put things in perspective to realize that there's more to the. You can't place the value of the presentation of your band based off of the level of talent in the band, right? There's a lot of great talented bands that are still in the neighborhood, It has a lot to do with the whole production engagements and the promotional management aspects of all that stuff. And no one realizes that, Sam. No, early in the processes. It's like non-existent.
You have the swag and you have something that draws people,
the desire,
or there's those moments where you've seen a band and been like, your jaw drops because something else is going on. You see a lot of good bands, but
when we see Toast, dude, you guys, each of you, man, you're all in it. Boom.
Yeah, someone, at least we're playing someone else's tunes. You know what I mean?
But you see a performance is your point, right? And they got it.
Yeah, there's got to be something else going on. I mean, I like to think our strength is the combined, unit that we work together well. There's a lot of bands that can get away with, if you're playing a great set list and you have like one super strong, person, you got a great singer, got a great, guitar player, you can get away with a lot because you're playing the song people want to hear. For us, we're playing songs that my wife will sometimes go, "What was that song you playing?" The only way to overcome that is to bust the living hell out of it, and go, "I don't know what it was, but it was fucking badass." Mm-hmm. That's the best compliment you can get. Like, I never heard that before, but it was great. That's now it's good because there's songs in our list that if you can just make it from beginning to end, people are gonna love it because the song is so good. The song's just so good.
Yeah, and Cinnamon Girl in particular, dude. Do you play it every gig, or do you just have to be lucky to be there to hear it? Because it's just there's something about that song when you guys perform it.
Scott writes all the set lists. Like I said, he records them all. He writes them all, and he's very purposeful with trying to. We always, and there are certain times that he and I will chat, and I'll say, "Hey, it's our first time here. Or it was hopping early, and it was little dead late. Let's front load all come out of the gate.
In.
So there's nights where we come out of the gate hard. There's nights where we come out of the gate and try to build it up. And Scott tries to try to break some things up. Change some songs out. Change the openers. Change the closers. And so. It's just there's always some purpose to the songs that we pick and what we're gonna do, but you never know you're always guessing with what the crowd's going to be down with, how they're going to act that night, even if you've been there 10 times, and sometimes then that's when you're trying to make the adjustment. And I usually call out when we have the first audible, it's like, oh, well, we did good.
So
we
you're the
made it
one
through
that
5.
calls those audibles?
Oh no, not the only time I'll call audibles if there's dancers. If there's
Okay.
for those who see us, we don't get lots of dancers. I think we have a good small amount of
When I
of
see you
danceable
guys
tunes.
have dancers all
Yeah,
night.
keeping
But
them more than
what I
it's
like
rare.
about
rare.
about Toast though is you'll play the big stages, right? You're getting the big stage gigs, but you'll play India Oak and Clintonville. Now, I'll go to that show, dude.
Yeah, well,
And I'll sit in a corner, and sip on a cocktail all night, just grooving to that the vibe in India Oak. Number one, when you're playing a live show in there, that's a favorite venue for me personally, because it's just got a lot of good fun music memories,
we
and you
had a
see a
lot
lot
of-
of fun. But to see Toast there, right? And to see you guys do these songs, that's a special thing. I like that you guys will do that.
yeah. Well, we don't have them on the
And
schedule this year.
It's intimate though.
It is.
Will
It
we
is.
ever see that again though? The fact that I like
I'll
it
never say never.
isn't gonna sway you one way or the other.
I was
know,
actually
but
thinking about it the other day, but the manager part of me looks and sees our schedule and sees gaps
some of the
in
other-
there,
yeah.
or I see other people, other bands posting their schedules, and I'm going, we should have been 2 times there, whatever. And and then it's just the competitive part of me, like, hey, how about I won? The show. And there's a part of, and I'm pretty self-deprecating with the bar owners, but I'm always like, there's a part where you just have to be a pain in the ass, unless you're the band at the top of their pecking order, where you don't have to be because you get the first pick.
Toast
and
is special though. You guys have a.
But we're in the middle of the pecking order, to be clear, and it varies by bar. I mean, we know that, and
some places you're going to do better than others.
yeah, and some nights, no matter what, you're the weather gets you, something else
It's
going
always
on
that.
in town.
Yeah.
People are burnt out. People are, summer gets weird. But anyway, I was thinking about the Oak today because there's I'm sure they're probably booked up actually, but there was some dates that I was trying to fill. I was like, hey, we're gonna go back, just do one bit, just build the shit out of it. And
Got the Rolodex under the G's. It's still the G's
it's a
though
lot.
on that, right?
I tell you, as the older, we've been humping our own PA for 20 some years, and when we don't play a place with house PA, we take our own, and then I've been a frustrated light guy for the last since we got back together, and so Scott's setting up PA, I'm setting up lights. It's a lot more work that goes on because I want our show, even if we're doing all the production, to be as entertaining as what. I'm not cramming something crazy into some of these places. I already overkill enough, I think, sometimes, but at the same time, the point is, like, shit's getting hard.
Oh, yeah.
I don't recover very well, so it's one thing. I get through the show, but boy, I don't feel good the next day.
Well, and before we go too far left turn at Albuquerque here, we were about to discover how the three of you guys got Lars Raymond involved in this thing.
So
And we skipped over it, and I thought, is Sam not want to talk about that? I wouldn't think that would be the case.
no,
But we
I've been
kind
being
of
terribly
went.
linear.
We took the.
Yeah, I have been jumping around the time.
That's okay.
But so we had
But I'm just trying to pull us back to
No,
that because
no,
I
no,
think
no.
that's an important
Yeah,
chunk of your history, mister.
Scott has been friends with Lars for quite some time. I didn't know him. I think John maybe had met him before, but Scott and him were close. And when we had lost, because we've lost several drummers, there was a point where on more than one occasion Lars's name came up.
Yeah.
But he was working, with multiple people, and he really wasn't looking to do, to my knowledge, I mean, this
Covers at the
wasn't looking to do covers. He had all his other projects going on, and and we would kind of charge on with the next thing. Well, finally, I don't know if the things just lined up right, or Scott had finally worn him down, and Scott was like, "Hey, man, we need somebody," and blah,
Jump
blah, blah.
in, baby. Jump in. He knows all the songs, doesn't he?
Well, yeah, I think what he was worried about is he didn't want to play shit he didn't want to play, and
Right.
that's the
Yeah, you can't blame him, right?
that's the
I mean,
that's every band. I say as a cover band,
right.
I don't think if you're playing your own music. Of course, the bands with giant catalogs that deny their greatest hits, that's a different issue. That certainly isn't us. So anyway, so Scott finally wears Lars down, like, "Hey, man, because I think Lars's big concern was that we were gonna just kind of do all of the stuff that, if you've been doing this long enough, you're like, I've been doing that forever." I mean, look, the hardest part about marketing a classic rock band is when you say you're classic rock, people's mind, depending on who you talk to, goes to a number of different ways. But there's also
It's very diverse.
there's also
levels of.
I can't think of the word. There's canon in classic rock, like "Thou Shalt Play," old time rock and roll, and Mustang Sally, and the
Stuff.
There is that stuff, and then there's we're gonna play a 15.5-minute version of Pigs Three Different Ways. Still classic rock, but
Left Turn at Albuquerque.
yeah, there's no good time rock and roll.
No.
Going down, and so even though we picked, I finally got, I've been wanting to do a Bob Seger tune forever. The only, all the Seger tunes I'd done before had been when I was playing Top 40 and playing weddings and shit that I did when I was younger, and all the quintessential tunes that you would expect someone to do. And finally I'm like, well, let's do this other one, because I hadn't seen anybody else do it, so let's do that
Fire
one.
Down Below is always a good
That's
kind
a
of
good one
one-off
too.
thing.
There's
Seeger. Love them.
Can you really name a? There's ones that you like more than you like others,
I
but
love
can
a
you?
lot of them.
Is there not really bad one?
No,
And there's a
there
lot.
isn't.
And that's why it's so hard to pick. Then we got to pick for the instrumentation. We got to pick for the fit, and does everybody kind of agree? But anyway, going back to the Lars thing. So Scott had been bugging him, and give it a shot. He came out, and the funny thing was he came out to check us out at Lucky's over in Hilliard, and we were
Lars
playing.
came out to check you out.
He came to see what it was about, and we were on set break, and for once, because I'm the guy who draws the least amount of people, and for once I had a couple that like 4 people that had come out to see me that I knew, and so
You have friends over there in Hilliard.
and so I'm talking to them, and I'm talking to them on set break, and finally Scott comes over and he's like, "Hey man, are you gonna come over and talk to Lars?" Because at this point it was kind of like he had agreed, but he still wanted to come. He had kind of agreed, but I think he still wanted to come see it, and
Wanted
obviously
to talk to the band
wanted
members.
to
right?
talk to the
Want to
people he
bond
didn't
with the
know.
People. Am I going to be able to
And so
hang
I
with these people?
So I talked to so I ended up talking to him for maybe 5-10 minutes, kind of a whirlwind, because I was trying to deal with my adoring crowd of 4 people that I drew, and So it probably wasn't a tremendously great impression, at least from meeting me. But as Lars kind of says on a regular basis, just a dick anyway. And a fair amount of the time, I'm certainly quite capable of performing that role and being, as the family would say, I am the agitator. So I like to stir the pot a little bit, but Lars decided to give it a try. I think part of it was, and I don't want to speak for him, it was the diversity of the set list that made him say, well, I could do covers if this is the way people can do covers. And we were like, you can if you're willing to accept small crowds and low pay. And you're golden. And so the business model surged forward. But Lars upped our profile. I will say his he knows so many people in the music scene that there was a degree of credibility.
Yeah, well respected. Yeah,
and so there was certainly a great boost, and then the other, and you could say this is probably by Lars as well, but the dudes from Hot Lucy came out to see us one night at Cardo's Pizza in Pickerington, and they went out. Wow. They went out and after that show and posted so many nice things. Pruden, in particular.
Sean is such a sweetheart.
Yeah, Sean went out there and a lot of the people.
He's a mentor for me. He really is.
Yeah, a lot of the people that follow us today.
Given so much.
Yeah, I have an interesting Pruden story. It's my only Pruden. It's kind of my only Pruden story. But,
we'll get there.
But anyway, we.
The Hot Lucy accolades.
They praised us, and all of a sudden, a bunch of people who followed them came out to check us out, and I think we really, kind of between the musicians, and some of those musicians' followings, we got this kind of, surge out of nowhere because
that's cool.
We were kind of stagnant for, we were doing all. For me, we were doing all right, but we didn't have any delusions of grandeur at that point.
That's cool, though. That's really cool. Yeah, that's good timing. Around what year was that? Was that after? That was right after COVID.
Yeah.
And because Toast
Lars,
right before, wasn't it?
Before,
yeah,
right before.
And then COVID hit.
Probably maybe a year.
Yeah.
Before.
But you guys came out, and I saw you guys early when Lars joined Toast, and then. That's when I saw Widener for the first time ever. Mm-hmm. Me personally.
Right.
It was during COVID that I saw the Toast show. So it was like, you guys got started, COVID hit, everybody's band schedules got, exploded out, whatever. Yeah. But I went to, it was at Fender's. I saw John and Toast for the very first time. And, waving to Lars and, because I've loved Lars for years. But, and I didn't know you and Scott at all. Mm-hmm. Didn't know anything about you guys. And not that I'm I just love Columbus music. I've been out there seeing shows for many years. And just part of the inspiration of the podcast is, the individuals like yourself that have all of this music history and, bringing it together with like-minded folks that make up, for in your case right now, Toast, and you're out there, one of the top bands in Columbus scene today. Okay. It's good stuff.
Yeah, John already had a bit of a following from his time in the Bellows, and and just you
guys had a good formula.
And him and Scott went to high school together. They knew each other. Then they played together in another project. So they had some crowd. It was me that I didn't really bring much to the table in that regard because I didn't have
you hold that
high school
thing
friends.
Down.
Oh no, I'm talking about bringing people.
Yeah.
I didn't have.
There wouldn't be people if you didn't have your foundation.
But more so than just kind of John drew people because John was John, and John was and it's, you know, his playing, when, you know, it can
It's
touch
good
you.
icing on your cake.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's you know, it's a big. When we're trying to be an original jam band, you got to have a Jerry, you got to have a Trey, and then you go back to hard rock, you got to have a Jimmy Page, you got to, you know,
He's all
rock
that.
is built around, you know,
He's all that.
you just can't get away. I think, and you know, it's two things that John does, in the sense of, like, he plays those parts, and a lot of people play those parts, but it's how he plays those parts. Is there something, you know, more that touches, you know, that you feel, and that's everybody, you know, that's everybody.
Yeah.
But when you're, you know, front and center on these guitar solos, that have already been, you know, some of the huge songs that guitar solos that most people can hum or sing. You know, it doesn't
got 'em
help.
down.
But it's the same thing with me and Scott when we're singing, and it's a song that everybody sings in their car, or something, or certainly thinks they can do, and you hear other bands do it. And there's so many great singers in town that I'm, you know, jealous of, and as well, you know.
Dude, you're a great singer and you're a great bass player. Frickin', and you're a great band leader. I mean, obviously, you know, look at what you're doing. It's awesome. You know, it's got some longevity, obviously, attached to it. You guys are out there, and you've got how many gigs in 2025?
We're around.
Full boat?
We're at least we're damn close to our average. We're right now we're a little under, but I think those will get filled out, and we always end up somewhere around anywhere from 25 to 28 shows a year.
That's a lot.
You know, I don't think it is until I go back and I look. I don't think it is until I go,
Until
hey, it'd be
September.
nice to go fishing for the weekend,
Yeah.
or
Oh.
go somewhere
2 gigs
with
this weekend. Yeah.
yeah,
Shit.
exactly. So, you know, I want
It's
to
Turtle
book.
Creek.
Yeah, I want to book
Lazy.
I want to book all those weekends, and then I realize I want to do something else occasionally as well. But you know, it's easier to plan out the band schedule, I guess, especially when you can, you know, have some degree of control of it.
If you're fortunate and you've worked as long and hard as you have on your craft, and you know how to manage a band, and you know attract the level and committed level of players that you're fortunate to be working with right now, man. You know, Sam, it's awesome, and we could talk to you for, I think, at least 1 or 2 more future episodes, dude. I mean, this thing's not going away. I'm going to keep doing this until my last day. The frequency
let's see where it
might
goes.
ebb and flow, you know,
I'll have to
because
see where
there's
my
so
hit
many,
stats
dude.
come up against the countless.
Oh, stop! I don't publish any of that.
Lars is gonna hold it over me.
I don't publish any of that. I don't publish any of it. You know, no way.
I love data. Give me some data. I'll crunch that shit.
I'll give you ranges in 6 months, Sam. I'll give you how you're trend.
feedback.
Your trend. Maybe if you did another post on Facebook to promote your episode, you'll get in a boost. Dude, I'm teasing
I know.
you.
Well, I mean, I'll go
Look,
through
there's
and
only
I'll-
so much I can do.
and I'll be like, okay, how many of those are just? Oh, it's a post from Sam. I was like,
what I want to try to do is get it to a point where there's enough, you know, volume or whatever that I can start investing in the listening platforms, you know, Spotify level, Apple level type exposures for Columbus music. And, you know, where's that point? Golly, man, I have no idea. I mean, this is like a grassroots vehicle of affection, right? That also, I think, draws a spotlight to individual contributions in the Columbus music scene, you know, young and old, and in various genres, you know. Man, just to have the opportunity like this, Sam, listening to all of the experiences that you've had and to go to a Toast show, I want someone listening to this to go see Toast, because, we can also leverage the links in your description of where there's your music. We're not playing your music now. We want them to go follow you and check where your music can be consumed. Not the way that I'm filtering it, but the way that you guys choose to do it. Mm-hmm. Wherever your link is, that's where we can say, hey, for more information, see toast at blah, blah, blah.com or whatever, or your Facebook page.
Yeah.
But it's your choice too. And that's very empowering. But the platform is inspired by people like yourself. And I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, no,
today.
I mean, I've caught other episodes on the channel, and
it's a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, it's cool, and it's a really cool thing, especially because there's cats in town that but you don't know really well, or you see each other at shows, so you can't talk very long, so it's been given me a chance to kind of.
You've done a lot, man. A lot. It's so cool. And you're able. They now they can get a little bit of where your background too, right? With this episode.
Yeah. Hopefully, more about me, more about the group as well, right? But yeah, it's cool. Still at it. Don't see it end coming in sight.
Good.
Nothing planned. Nothing planned. Sorry, hon. Sorry. See, as long as my knee can handle it, I guess.
That's the thing.
Yeah, it's a whole other thing of how I feel the next day.
Aging's not for the weak.
No. I have to.
I feel you, man.
I have to dial back some of my Eddie jumps and stage dives and stuff like that, or otherwise known as 2 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Just keep playing that bass, man. Just keep laying that thing down. One time, I'd love to we'll do another episode in the future. I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of bass. And maybe what we'll do tonight when we do post-production, I'd like to get your perspective on gear for bass, live gear. And I'll tell you kind of where I am, kind of playing the bass recently, what I've learned. There's a lot to the bass tone that no one kind of gives credit.
That is true. And then you can.
But maybe we can talk about that privately, if you don't mind, Sam.
Okay,
we'll
that's
spend
fine.
some time on that in the post-production. Fine. We'll do that.
Yep.
In the meantime, man, Sam Collis tonight, currently with Toast, but he's got quite the story behind him. He's playing with 3 cats that just blow your mind musically, and go see a Toast show. It's going to be good stuff. And Sam Collis, really appreciate you making the time tonight and sharing everything that you have tonight. It's really awesome.
Well, thanks, Len. I appreciate you having me on, and it's been a blast.
Episode number 108, Sam Collis. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.